We have 1 minute to go. According to my watch, it's 3 o'clock South African time on the dot. My name is Lindiwe Majele Sibanda. I'm the Research Chair for Sustainable Food Systems at Future Africa Institute at the University of Pretoria. It is my pleasure and honor to be the moderator of this second webinar, which is 2 out of 4 that we will be convening in partnership with the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, in partnership with the French Embassy here in South Africa, in partnership with FANAPAN, our advocacy team that are accompanying us, and of course, all of you stakeholders, the scientists who have contributed to packaging the thematic content that was shared. We're excited because today we are focusing on land, water, energy resources, and the whole idea is to understand, are there any innovations out there that we should know about? If they're there, can we scrutinize them in order to scale them up? But more important, to equip our policymakers, our negotiators, our messengers who are going to be informing policy development in our countries, in our region, and of course, continent and globally. We're excited because we are members of a club. The club I talk about is CLAB, and this club speaks to climate, land, agriculture, and biodiversity. Last week, our focus was the effect of climate on food systems. This week, we focus on issues of land, water, and energy resources. As we know, adequate resources and access to sustainable use of land, water, and energy is critical for socio-economic development, not just in Africa, but globally. Africa's own land, water, and energy resources are facing increasing pressure due to the population growth, economic development, and urbanization. As if that's not enough, climate change has aggravated the pressure on these precious resources, and with the marginalization of many African communities, this has made the continent one of the most vulnerable in terms of climate change effects. These challenges, coupled with the policies that are not evidence-based, together with the chronic gender disparity, which is rooted in the African culture, and the fact that we have not done much about it, we have an urgent call to respond. The climate, the land, agriculture, and Biodiversity CLAB-Africa team wants to present an opportunity for Africa's scientists to contribute towards addressing these challenges. Today's webinar will focus on the sustainable use of land, water, and energy resources, which is one of the sub-themes within CLAB. I'm excited because we've brought in experts from the Centers of Excellence. I will be joined by Dr. Jafaru Musa Ejiyeya, who is a postdoctoral research fellow in chemical engineering at the African Research Universities Alliance, ARUA, Center of Excellence in Energy, which is hosted by the University of Stellenbosch. We're also going to be joined by another expert from Africa's own Center of Excellence within ARUA, Prof. Neil Goosen, who is also in chemical engineering from Stellenbosch University. We are excited that with the Centers of Excellence coming to collaborate, we will grow the number of cutting-edge scientists who are well positioned to address the wicked problems that we face. Our main presentation, which is based on the thematic brief that you received, is going to be delivered by Dr. Gabriel Lekalakala. He's an climate change and agrohydrology specialist who has been one of our fellows as an early career student many years ago, but is now an expert in the area. A follow-up session after the presentation will be moderated by our very own program manager, Ms. Sitembile Mwamakamba from FANAPAN, and she'll bring a panel that represents the stakeholder base. Mr. Stephen Lako Mbondeu, who is the head of Climate and Water Resource Department in Cameroon. He's really working on 4 life issues. And he's also the co-vice chair of the Global Framework for Water Scarcity in Agriculture. We also have Ms. Shamiso Mlilwana, who is an SDG investment specialist, who will be talking on Global Water Partnership behalf. We also have an expert from our International Water Management Institute, a CGIAR center, Dr. Evaristo Mapedza, who is a senior researcher at IMWI and is based in Ghana. So colleagues, you will agree with me that we've pulled all stops to bring all the experts who can inform this thematic brief, which we are going to distill into a policy advisory note. Why are we having these webinars? We have the webinars so that we give you a chance to reflect on what has been packaged, but more important, for you to contribute, because we cannot do a good job from a desk exercise. We want you to send your feedback, but most important, to add on the innovations that are happening in your own country, in your region, or that you've heard about that could make Africa a better place. For today, we have 102 registered participants, and they represent 25% academia, with policy research organizations at 21%, government institutions 11% out of 102, private sector 10%, civil society organizations 6%, farmer groups are at 4%, we have the media as well 3%, and UN organizations constitute 2% out of that 102 registered participants. So we are off to an excellent start. This webinar is happening live here, but you can also follow us on Facebook, and I'll get a head count of how many people have already logged on Facebook. We want to make sure no one is left behind, and that's why we've created various platforms for you to engage. Thank you and welcome. So with the program that we have in front of us, we are going to be going for 1.5 hours. Without further ado, I would like to bring on board Dr. Jafaru Egiyeya, who is going to just share with us what he does with relation to land, water, and energy resources. What are the interesting emerging findings that are coming up from his research work at Stellenbosch University, and what spoke to him as we shared the policy thematic brief that was circulated. So welcome, Dr. Jafaru. We are happy to have you on board.
Thank you, Professor Sibanda, for the introduction, and greetings to everyone there. Yeah, thank you. Okay, great. So as a postdoc with the African Research Universities Alliance Center of Excellence in Energy, I actually conduct, I actually carry out modeling frameworks. I actually model the water energy food nexus using what you call systems dynamics modeling. So I'm actually more of a desktop researcher than a field worker. But that's what I'm currently doing. But prior to that, I'll just explain some of my previous research prior to what I'm currently doing as a postdoc. I carried out in my PhD, and after my PhD, I did some work on bioenergy optimization. As you rightly know, bioenergy is a form of energy that could be used to replace, or should I say substitute, for fossil fuels in the form of biodiesel or bioethanol and even biogas. So what I did was that I optimized the production of this bioenergy, whereby I considered the amount of water that is used to grow crops. Crops are the raw materials that feed in to produce biodiesel. And the energy form, which is produced from the biodiesel, is the energy component. So in this respect, water is used to produce crops. While water is used to produce crops, the crops are used to produce energy, and the cycle goes round. So what I did was optimizing, or should I say, maximizing profits that could be derived from a supply chain. A supply chain whereby you have your raw materials obtained from various rural settlements. Then these raw materials are sent to various, should I say, anaerobic digestion or biogas plants, which produce biogas, or biorefineries, which produce biodiesel and bioethanol. So these are now translated or transported to various, should I say, demand zones where these bioenergy products are used. So that was basically what I did, and to maximize economics from that supply chain. And in terms of climate change, I tried looking at minimizing environmental impacts from the supply chain to see the effects when, if an objective of minimizing greenhouse gas emissions is contributed or is considered in the supply chain. Now, coming back to the wealth nexus, how does what I do or what I did translate to the wealth nexus today? And in terms of policy, for policy making. And what I do today, I use systems dynamics modeling. Systems dynamics modeling looks at the various sectors of the economy. Where do you get your water from? Where do you get your energy from? And where do you get your food from? How do they interact? So policymakers, decision makers, research institutions, or even universities come together, and we try to look at how these are interacting, try to find the flows. And when you can find the flows, we do not work in, I would say we do not work in silos again, because they are interrelated. Whatever you do in one silo, let's say water node affects an energy node, and the energy node affects the food node. So they are equally weighted. They're equally weighted. So that is what I'm currently doing. And we're currently doing something, a project related to the city of Cape Town, where we are looking at the effects of surface water, groundwater on the food that is being, the various agricultural crops that are being produced in the city of Cape Town, and the various energy sources. So that's a brief background of what I currently do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Jafaru, for sharing with us. We always believe it's important to make sure our early career researchers have a platform where they just give us a pitch of what they're doing. This is knowledge generated by Africans for Africa and the global platform. And we look forward to hearing the outputs from that study, more so that some of the innovations that are recommended from this Nexus and the thematic brief are really talking to that interrelationship. Where does our water come from? How do we harvest it? How does the water produce the biomass that we use for energy? And how do we make that nexus work for us? So thank you very much for sharing. We'll come back to you if there are questions, but for now, we want to move to the presentation by Dr. Gabriel Lekalakala. He's going to present to us the thematic brief that was shared. He is not the author, but he is the trusted messenger. So, Dr. Gabriel, can you tell us what you do and what makes you the trusted messenger for this message? We've carefully selected someone who's done research and is in the policy interface. If you can just, go on presentation mode. Over to you, Dr. Gabriel.
Thank you very much, Professor Sibanda. I've met Professor Sibanda when I was a young professional as part of the Challenge program on water and food. Since we've met, Prof, I went on to pursue my PhD in Germany, and I went to work in Parliament supporting the Select Committee on Land Reform, Environment, Mineral Resources, and Energy. Currently, Prof, I'm the specialist scientist for climate change analysis in the Department of Water and Sanitation. This is the layout of the talk that I'll be giving today. I'll start off by looking at the interrelations and the problems and opportunities that are there when you look at the land, water, and energy resource use. Thereafter, we'll go into some of the key governance frameworks and shortcomings, and we'll highlight some of the innovations and solutions worthy of investment that have been conducted throughout most of Africa. To start off, we have the land, water, and energy nexus. With this, the aim is to secure livelihoods and resilient livelihoods. Here are some of the technologies that rely or depend on the interrelationships between the nexus. So the relationship between the nexus drive the success of these technologies that are being used to contribute towards the livelihoods. On the energy, the aim is to increase access to energy through diversified and renewable energy sources. We've heard a lot about energy mixes. And on land, the aim is to increase land tenure, land use, and access. This is achieved through sustainable land management and other practices. Water, we have increased supply of water and equitable access. This is done to ensure reserves that would buffer during extreme events. And all of these operate within an already altered environment and are further exacerbated by changes in climate, as Prof has alluded to earlier. And land mediates the impacts of climate change, acting as both a climate change contributor and a climate change mitigator based on the type of land use. I'll start off by talking about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 6 looking at clean water and sanitation, and 7 looking at affordable and clean energy are more applicable to these nexus.
We've got background noise. There's someone who's got an audio that is conflicting with the presentation. Please, if you can mute. Thank you. Over to you, Gabriel.
Thank you. For water, Goal 6, which strives to increase the water use efficiency, sustainable water balancing to address the water scarcity, and the implementation of integrated water resource management and transboundary cooperation. For energy, part of the Nexus, Goal 7 aspires to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy. For land, Goal 6 and 15 indicate a meaningfulness on the importance of sustainable land use and water resources. Zooming in on a regional scale, we have the African Union Agenda 26 objectives that also highlight the Nexus. On the energy, it calls for Africa to accelerate the harnessing of energy resources. For land, it indicates the agricultural land that will be managed in an environmentally and socially sustainable manner. For water, it provides that Africa shall have equitable and sustainable use and management. I thought I should also zoom in within a country using South Africa as an example. In South Africa, we have what we call the National Development Plans. And these National Development Plans have linkages to the Sustainable Development Goals and also to the Agenda 2063. Some of the key links that are there from the NDP from South Africa on energy is economic infrastructure. So the focus here is mainly on empowering South Africa to have or produce enough energy. On land is an integrated and inclusive rural economy. This forms part of the land reform work. And on water is the economic infrastructure, which looks at water resource and services. Of interest is that South Africa also, through its policies, takes into account an integrated water management and transboundary cooperation, ensuring that the flows from South Africa meet international standards so that our countries downstream from us have enough water. Zooming into some of the innovations or solutions worthy of investment, we'll start off with the partnerships in fencing for human and wildlife conflict management. Here, the problem in Kenya, there were conflicts amongst both human and wildlife and competition for resource. And surprisingly, the innovation that was used in this case, it was fencing. And some of the benefits that were found by erection of an electrified fence was a 12% yield increase of annual crops in the area. They noticed a decline in poaching, which was evident in the number of elephants and antelopes that were increasing within the conservancy. And this boosted local communities to go into farming. So they reported a 15.5% growth in the number of farmers entering the farming sector and adopting new crops and technologies. This also contributed towards crop production and a further almost reduced all of the conflict or incidences that have been experienced in the past, and a further significant 86% increase in the value of the land around the area. Further, it's the health improvements that were due to the reduced number of attacks from animals. And due to this fencing, they reported a 47% improvement in revenue. The second example is from the joint land use for tenure security in Tanzania. The issue here, it was that there was a lack of regulatory structures to manage shared resources. And the innovation that was used here, it was the development of a land use plans from mapping shared resources. And the benefits of communities coming together and mapping their various shared resources afforded them the opportunity to better understand the different resources in their respective villages and where they are across the landscape. It fostered partnerships between the villages and thus reducing conflict over the resources. This led to some agreements that aimed to protect those shared resources such as grazing areas. Further benefits were sustainable land management, which resulted in the doubling in shared grazing lands available for the communities. Based on this innovation, it enabled government processes and policies to be mainstreamed through this innovation. The third example is the Rain for Sale. Prof, if you remember the challenge program on water and food, we looked at rainwater harvesting as part of it. And this was a similar study was conducted in Rwanda, but ours was more of a research, looking at decrease in water availability and increased costs and efforts incurred by poor communities, specifically impacting women. This was achieved through upscaling of rainwater harvesting through a business model wherein entrepreneurs were brought in and capacitated on rainwater harvesting and given filters that they could use as part of their business. The benefits of this is that the entrepreneurs were able to provide over 2,400 liters of filtered water per day, which is equivalent to water used by 60 households. During the dry season, these entrepreneurs were able to produce 830 liters of filtered water, which is equivalent to the water being used by 20 households. So some of these innovations are yielding benefits and helping to address some of the challenges that are brought on by climate change. The fourth problem is water quality. This was an innovation from the Niger River in Bokomo, Mali. There's lack of monitoring, and this lack of monitoring of water quality could be attributed to the fact that along the river, there was an emergence of settlements along its banks with the challenges of sanitation infrastructure. There was no proper monitoring in place to ensure the river health and the quality of the water. So the proposed innovation is water quality management plan using innovative tools such as smartphones, submarine drones in combination with satellite monitoring. And the benefits of this is that the data collection is maintained within the communal communities. This speaks to climate science, to citizen science, where citizens participate in the collection and monitoring of their own resources. The database is centralized, and with satellite monitoring, it offers visualization of some of the information. There is continuous communication and information sharing on the river water quality. The fifth is the solar systems. This came about due to lack of access to energy, due to lack of access to the electrical grid, low income, and some of the communities being located in remote or isolated areas. The innovation developed here is clean energy products such as portable solar panels, solar lights, and environmentally friendly cooking stoves. The benefits of this provided clean and safe energy to those communities. Solar systems provides training and support to women to deliver clean energy directly to their homes in the rural areas of Africa. The business model aims to improve women's income and reduce the number of deaths and health-related illnesses due to harmful fumes used traditionally in cooking and heating. The sixth solution is from Kenya, where the challenge was increasing the amount of power onto the grid. This was a 5-phased project using steam sale business model, which supplies steam to the power plants to be converted into electricity. The first phase produced about 105 megawatts of electricity. This was achieved through contracting of independent power producers. These independent power producers of these power plants through a built, own, operate approach. The second phase, located in the eastern sector, is aimed at generating about 60 megawatts of electricity, and the other third to fifth phase are envisaged and I'd like it to yield even more electricity due to the robust geothermal resource found in the area. Currently, Kenya has more than tripled its power production from below 200 megawatts to almost 672 megawatts in just over 6 years. So this is quite an achievement from an African perspective. In conclusion, an integrated approach is urgently required in the continent to ensure sustainable resource use and development, considering the pressures owing to climate change and increasing population. Except for Goal 6 of the SDGs, such interrelations is not expressed. It's not expressed in other applicable goals, but arguably implied in the objectives. It is recommended that African states coordinate the Nexus government framework, and this has been shown from the examples is achieved through partnerships, and also ensuring that gender imbalance is considered through the socio-economic value chain. Where land is concerned, development of land use plans in rural areas and urban areas to ensure conservation and sustainable use of resource, encourage private sector and civil society partnerships in informing policy decisions on the resources, investing in entrepreneurial ventures, an example that was shown with the rain for sale, prioritizing women as beneficiaries in the above ventures. Recent studies have shown that programs that are run by women are more resilient, and investing more in women would ensure the sustainability and resilience of such programs. Investigate and adopt measures to produce sustainable energy at a relatively large scale. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Lekalakala. I finally coined it. Thanks, Gabrielle, for unpacking the message that was in the thematic brief. Surely we've got lessons for Africa from Africa. And the issue is there are many out there. We've had examples on water, on land, and on energy. And what we now need to find out is, are there any out there that we need to bring to the fold? I'm going to ask Prof. Neil Goosen to come in and just share his reflection. He's sitting as an expert, he's heading a center of excellence. What are you hearing, Neil? Does it resonate, or is it just old wine in a new bottle? Is it something we can take forward and take to scale? Where are you sitting, and does this sound right? Over to you, Neil.
Thank you, Prof, and thank you for the opportunity. So I'm from Stellenbosch University and director of the Center of Excellence in Energy. So before I do a bit of a pitch on the center, allow me just some comments on this issue. So as soon as one speaks about energy, one has to look at both the uses and the generation. As soon as you look at the generation, you realize you can't untangle energy from water issues. As soon as you talk about water, you can't untangle it from agriculture. And I think the realization is becoming more and more that to look at these different resources in a siloed approach or in a mono view creates a lot of unwanted impacts if there's an intervention in one of these systems. So it's very encouraging to see that the systems thinking or the Nexus approach is taking hold. One of the great opportunities that this approach allows us to exploit is to specifically investigate the interlinkages between these systems. So we've become very good at looking at, for example, the energy sector in isolation, but how it interacts with the water sector or the agricultural sector or the land sector is maybe not as well described or understood. So some of the work that we do, and Jafaro drives that, is to explicitly look at those interlinkages. I think for us to be driving the Nexus approach forward, I think we have to be explicit about what its use is and who the end user is. So, and what I mean by that is, if one looks at a regional scale, and the Water Research Commission is doing great work in that respect to have a SADC Nexus view, and the target audience there would definitely be intergovernmental panels and negotiators and diplomats to understand not just a South African view, but a regional view. Some of the work that we've done, and I'll show a slide or two about that, is we've taken the other part of the scale where we literally looked at individual smallholder farming, smallholdings, and use the Nexus approach to try and analyze an energy input there. And I'm just going to share a few slides with that, and just by way of that, introduce our center. So we're from Stellenbosch University, where we host the Arua Center of Excellence in Energy. From the beginning, we said we want to follow an integrated approach, where we looking at a systems thinking approach, where we've got water, energy, food, maybe I must just put it in presentation mode, but explicitly also nutrients. And with nutrients, we take a wider view. Those are kind of fertilizers that might come from energy generation. And so we try and acknowledge this systems approach. We realized that renewable energy can play a crucial role in intensification of agriculture. When we talk about current events, something like fertilizer production is linked to natural gas, and for the reason that natural gas is needed as an energy source to bind nitrogen from the atmosphere. Post-harvest preservation, both in terms of things like drying and cooling, are crucial to the food system, and water supply is critically dependent on that. And we took the view we want to specifically look at smallholder farmers, and what I'm showing is just a small snapshot of one project where we looked at whether anaerobic digestion as a source of renewable energy can integrate well in a smallholder farming system. We looked at 3 regions, 2 in South Africa and 1 in Madagascar. It was part of a wide project. I show the link there. By all means, go and have a look at the project. But it was all about intensification of farming techniques using ecological methods. So we went through a whole process where we estimated biomass availability for individual farms. We went through technology selection, estimation of energy yield if we use anaerobic digestion as a technology to get that, and a financial and economic assessment. And just a few key takeaways here are that implementing biogas technology by itself in these settings and using the data we generated or collected there is financially feasible, but not very profitable. So there's not a huge financial incentive to do it. But if we take a systems approach and we look at co-benefits that plug into or derive from this anaerobic digestion system, then there are many more benefits. And if you can quantify that as a system, then the benefits of these things become clear. And I think that's the value of the Nexus approach. And a takeaway message from that, as an example, is that in Africa, biogas uptake is maybe not that big as it is in the East, but there is a very big societal benefit that can be gained from that if it's encouraged sensibly and responsibly. But that could be something that forms part of a policy brief. Just some further reading for anybody that's interested, but I think I will wrap up there. Prof. Sibanda, thanks for the opportunity. It's nice to contribute.
Thank you very much, Prof. Gilson. As you can see, colleagues, we are harvesting knowledge. What I'm taking away from the intervention is that it's important that we take a systems approach, and it's important that we look at the core benefits. And then third and most important is the situation, the local analysis, situation analysis. Some things will work in country X, but country Y, it doesn't come together. That's why we need scientists in every country ground proofing these innovations before we can say they are scalable. Let's tick the boxes and say in what context. We thank you, Prof. Gilson. We believe you are going to accompany us as we package the policy brief, because we need your wealth of experience so that when we face our policymakers, we are producing evidence that is ground truthed and can inform policy development. I want to thank our three presenters right from the beginning. Gabrielle, who presented the overview of the thematic brief, Prof. Gilson, who's just shared the highlights in terms of his reaction on the framing for policy, and of course, Dr. Jafaru, who started us at the beginning by sharing with us what his research is looking at in terms of the Nexus issues we are addressing today. I would like now to hand over to my colleague, Mrs. Tembile Mwamakamba, but before I do that, some interesting cuts. This is your webinar. Feel free to share information. We are a club. The fact that you have received our MailChimp, it means you are in our database. And please let us know if it has been put in your spam box. We will try and make sure we whitewash you. Don't like the term, but that's what I was told is done, so that your server doesn't reject our mailing list when we send the MailChimp to you. Second, big announcement from SADC. They are calling for regional approach on energy from entrepreneurs. They've given us the link on the chat. There is an opportunity for us to get resources for things we believe in. Thank you, SADC, for posting that. Over to you, Sitembile.
Thank you, Prof. Sibanda. Good afternoon to you all. I am going to now transition with a panel of three colleagues who are going to be reflecting on the presentation that we have just had, but also bringing their own experiences from their different workplaces. I'm joined now by Mr. Stefan Lako, who is the head of Climate and Water Resources Department of Water for Life in Cameroon. I'm also joined by Ms. Shamiso Mlilwana, who is the SDG Investment Specialist at the Global Water Partnership. Finally, we will also have Dr. Evaristo Mapedza, who is the Senior Researcher at the International Water Management Institute, IMWE. These three colleagues have been invited specifically to share perspectives from a practitioner's point of view, from a policy point of view, and from a research point of view. So colleagues, welcome. This is our time to have this conversation and to understand what could be missing from the presentation that Gabriel just walked us through. Perhaps let me start by going to Mr. Lako to just, you I've known you, Lako, from our days in YPAD, the Young Professionals in Agricultural Development. So I know you bring in a very good youth perspective. But at the same time, you sit strategically within the ministry that's responsible for water in Cameroon. Reflecting on the presentation that you have just had, is there anything that we are missing in this technical brief? And what are some of the interesting cases from your own work experience that we should be shining a spotlight on?
Thank you very much, Tembe. I'm really happy to be part of this webinar. Yes, I'm a steering committee member of YPAD network, which is a global network of youth working on agricultural development. And I'm also, as well as I've presented, the co-vice chair of WASAC, which is the global framework for water scarcity in agriculture in the changing climate. I'm also involved in public services as the head of irrigation and drainage division in the Ministry of Agriculture, actually. And I also work with Water for Life as the head of climate and water resource. So I do really acknowledge the presentation that were given out here, which are really interesting. And we actually are putting forth the energy aspect, which is, when we discuss of climate change, generally we mainly focus on forests, on agriculture and on water. And we don't stress much about the role that energy is going to be playing for these various sectors to be developed, to contribute to development, in fact, but also to reduce our greenhouse emissions. And I think in the briefs, it's really important to show how the various approaches are going to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, specifically using the biofuels. And we also have to go looking at how do we reuse or improve of the efficiency of the use of that energy. And how can we be using it for agriculture and also for water, but with optimization of that energy. Apart from that, I would also like to mention that it's really important when conducting such research and policy discussions to highlight areas where there's still lack of knowledge or needs of research or discussions, because actually we have a huge potential in Africa with a lot of young people dealing with research who will to also contribute to development through research, through practice or any other means. And sometimes they don't have the repair or the axis on which they have to be working, or they don't really see how it aligns with or national or international policies. So these linkages are also really important to highlight. And I noticed in all the presentations that there were actually three things that were coming together. That is local solutions, partnership, but also technical innovations. And I think that is something very important that we have to also embed into our policies design, but also even in our project designs, so as to develop solutions that can work for local people, for local solutions, but from there, take some interesting innovation that can be duplicated elsewhere. In terms of examples of what we have, in the WASAC, for example, we have the philosophy of from farm to fork. That is thinking of the whole chain of producing the food, for example, transforming the food, everything that goes in, be it the energy or water, the right to the consumption of that particular good, and even the good, the waste that is produced after using of the good. What do we do of that? We have to think like a cycle, like was said by Dr. Jafaru, in order to improve on how we use the resources that we have, be it the land, the water, or the energy. Other thing that I'll also mention is the question of the tenure. The solar program that is run by FAO is actually promoting the water tenure. That is, people around where we have water resources have to be to own the water and also define rights to access. And when we have other stakeholders coming in, they have to discuss about how do they share the rights of use of that water. And they have to be granted those rights in the policies that are developed. So these are just two. I will also probably mention the third one, since we talked about the gender aspect. Actually, the Global Water Partnership is promoting the WACDEP-G, which is water and climate development, but with the gender perspective. And they are actually developing what they call the gender transformative approach, which has to tackle the root depth cause of gender inequalities, and which is also something that can be really of help for Africans. And we should really go to our deep cultural roots, because I believe that these things exist in our cultures, but we are not just maybe sometimes really alert about how it is implemented. So here are just from few points that I wanted to share with you. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm happy to be there. Keep in touch.
Thank you, Lako, for your contributions and some very interesting points that you are raising here, sort of tying together what you have had. So I like your very first point where you say that we need to show how the various approaches are going to reduce greenhouse gases. So if we are going to be talking about the race to net zero and looking at how as a continent we will contribute towards the targets of the Paris Agreement, I think part of what we need to do with these technical briefs is demonstrate how we are going to do that. And we do have the innovations that we have identified. We just need to tighten the story. Also, another important point you raise is around the need to be honest with ourselves in terms of what we know and what we don't know. So the importance of highlighting research gaps, so that those are the areas that the research fellows who are from Arua, who are from our other sort of research institutions can pick that up and they can take it forward. Thank you very much for those very important points that you have raised. I would like to encourage all the participants to please send through your questions through the chat. Send through not just questions, but also your contributions and your reflections on the presentation. You were listening, you had the examples that were presented, but perhaps you know something that can enrich the technical brief. We welcome those contributions. Now, allow me to then move over to Ms. Shamiso Mlilwane. You work with the Global Water Partnership. I know you have some very good links with the SADC water group where you're talking about Nexus issues, and you are the SDG investment specialist. So that's quite interesting as well, because it means that you're looking at the global agenda, but how it applies within the region. Listening to the presentation, Shami, what are we missing? What do we need to highlight?
Thanks very much, Thembi, and good afternoon to everybody. I'm very happy that Lako has already sort of touched on some of the gender-specific issues that need to be strengthened within the brief, as well as the work that Global Water Partnership has been doing to try and sort of unpack and uncover what those barriers are. Maybe just a bit of a background for those who are not familiar with the organization. So Global Water Partnership was actually created to foster an integrated approach to water resources management. So we manage activities and convene stakeholder engagements and dialogue across 13 different regions in the world. And I work particularly within the SADC region as well as the Pan-African region to help address some specific issues around water security and related issues. And one of the projects or programs that we're running within the SADC region is the SADC Regional Nexus Dialogues Project, which is a project that's been funded by the European Union and is being led by SADC with the support from Global Water Partnership. And it's really focusing in on mainstreaming the WEF Nexus within governance and investment opportunities, right? So I think it's really key to start at that governance level. And I know there was already a presentation that was given earlier on by Gabriel with regards to some of the key frameworks around water, energy, and food. But I think it's very important to speak to the coordination mechanisms as well, particularly when we're looking at governance around WEF Nexus and how the various sectors coordinate with each other, right? In terms of the work that we've been doing within SADC, beyond beginning to actually conceptualize what the WEF Nexus means within the region, which I think is also very important because it does appear that, you know, it takes on a different context within the areas that you're working on, right? So it's really sort of very important to conceptualize what it means within the research area that you're working with. The next thing we then sort of looked to do as part of the project was really go through a stringent policy coherence analysis on some of the key regional programs and policies, right? And using that information, we then sort of helped to establish a SADC WEF Nexus regional governance framework that takes into account some of the existing policies, some of the existing structures within the SADC level to try and see how better to coordinate these sectors around water, energy, and food. So I think that's an area where we could sort of look to strengthen and speak to what's already sort of being done within the continent, practically at that coordination of sectoral institutions. I think another area that's a big focus, particularly within SADC, is around operationalizing the WEF Nexus approach by way of investment decisions, right? So I think this also then brings us to this discussion with regards to these technologies that have been presented, right? Within the youth space as well, we're working with a Southern African Youth in Water, Energy, and Food Nexus network, right? It's called SAWIN. And as part of this process, we've also been working with youth across the region to identify some potential entrepreneurial ideas with regards to the WEF Nexus approach. And I think the main challenge and barrier that we've been seeing, we've been getting some fantastic entrepreneurial ideas and technologies that are being thought of and developed. But the struggle is around sort of translating the idea, the concept, and scaling that up, right? So I think it would be very useful as well to understand in terms of the technologies that are presented, how they also sort of propose to be scaled up, given that they've already had this chance to be demonstrated to a certain extent. So I think those are some of the key elements that I wanted to stress. Another thing that I think would be quite useful, particularly within contextualizing the benefits around the WEF Nexus within the region, beyond just speaking to the natural resource base, is also trying to see what are the priorities within the continent or within the region that we're trying to sort of strengthen, right? And I know within the SADC region, there's a strong focus around strengthening productive capacities, which basically sort of speaks to the productive resources together with the entrepreneurial capabilities and production linkages that can then sort of determine the capacity of a country to produce goods and services and enable it to grow and develop. So I think it's very, very important to frame those technologies in a way that can sort of speak to how it will sort of look to meet some of those productive capacity goals that the continent has and that the continent desperately needs for it to develop and thrive. Yeah, I think I'll stop there for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Chami. I actually want to come back to you before I let you off the hook. So you spoke quite a bit about the need to mainstream the WEF Nexus in governance frameworks. Yeah. And when you are talking governance within GWP and within the SADC sort of context, at what levels are you talking governance? Are you talking community level? Are you talking regional level? Are you talking national level? What's the scale of the sort of governance discussions that you're having?
So thanks for asking that. Actually, as part of this project that we've been doing, it's been a two-phase project. The first phase was really focusing in at the regional level and trying to develop this regional governance framework, right? Because a lot of the policies that are developed from a sort of top-down approach. So we supported SADC within the development of this regional governance framework that has then been accepted and adopted by the ministers for water, energy, and agriculture across the entire SADC region. Now what we're looking to do is get into each of the SADC member states and using this regional governance framework as a guideline, see how we can also support member states in terms of establishing governance frameworks and stronger coordination mechanisms around the water, energy, and agricultural sectors based off of this sort of template that has been established at the regional level. So that's the level that we're sort of looking at the moment. So it really does extend from regional through to the national and ministerial level. But one of the things that we're looking to do at the more community and local level is really use that as the platform to sort of demonstrate the practical implementation of the WEF Nexus and how, you know, it can be used to build the case for investments incorporating the WEF Nexus. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much for giving us that sort of broken down view of how it all happened. I think the other important point that you've really raised, something that's probably not well captured in the brief, is the issue of investment. So yes, we have all these wonderful technologies that we are saying we should be adopting because ultimately they're climate smart and they will help us improve our sort of water energy efficiency story. But where will the money come from for these technologies to be implemented at scale? Like you're saying, getting that idea or that concept off the paper and on the ground and making sure that it's rolled out at scale. So the issue of investments, I really picked that up as an important intervention from your end. Thank you. Let me sort of give you a break right now, but maybe not for too long. I see some contributions coming through in the chat. Let me move over now to Dr. Evaristo Mapedza to hear from him from the International Water Management Institute point of view. After having listened to the presentations, perhaps some of the interventions, what are we missing or where are the opportunities and what can you share from your work experience?
Thank you very much, Tembi. And just maybe by also starting by giving a bit of a brief overview of our institute. The International Water Management Institute is one of the consultative group on international agricultural research, which is CGIR. And our institute focuses on innovative water solutions for sustainable development, focusing on food, climate, and growth as some of the key themes as well. So in terms of, I would also want to thank, I think the presenters, they highlighted very key points, which is quite interesting, and even the summary of the brief. From my perspective, maybe I would say, what are some of the things that we are missing? I would start off maybe by looking at the, I like the idea of the systems thinking that the water and energy food nexus, it brings us into a systems thinking, and which is much more holistic. But I would also want maybe to expand on that to say that I think within our institute, we are sort of pushing the WEF nexus a bit further by adding, looking at biodiversity as a fourth element. And at the moment, we are in the process of developing a research which is led by one of our colleagues. And they are looking at WEF with an E at the end, where they are looking at ecosystems. So it would be good to also maybe expand that and have much more holistic thinking where you are linking with looking at the ecosystems, which to some extent links to when I saw from Prof. Neil's presentation, I saw he had also added a nutrient component. So it is already maybe moving in that direction. So that's one of the areas which I think sort of complementing what some of the things that we have found and further directions for further research. Maybe the other aspect that I would want to comment on is that I know the point we have made, the point has been made that we are linking with climate change, but we need, especially with this year with COP27, where there's going to be discussions in Egypt, where we are talking about climate change. We also need, from a WEF perspective, we need to make a point that climate change is water change, because if you're looking at climate issues, we are talking about flood, we are talking about drought, all those issues, they hinge on water issues. So we need to ensure that we are linking more about what we, when we are talking about WEF, we are actually addressing climate change. We are talking about climate change so that we don't lose out the water component in the discussions of climate change. And then maybe the other component which I would also want to talk about is, because when we are talking about WEF, the Nexus approach, we are looking at the issues of trade-offs, the benefits, the synergies. We should also look at this within the context of SDGs. How are these connecting with the sustainable development goals? And when we bring all the different components together, what are the benefits that we are getting? What is it that we are losing? If we are talking, I know WEF talks about food production, but in some cases, people have also started moving into looking at nutrition security as well. We are just producing food, but how do we make ensure that the food production that we are talking about is also nutritious as well? I also like maybe some of the things I'm amplifying some of the points which have been raised as well on citizen science as well. Gabriel mentioned this, and I would think that this is a key point in that we want to amplify the local voices in terms of the evidence that they are getting from the ground. This results in us coming up with sustainable solutions because people realize what it means, where the information is coming from, and how that informs what they are doing. I also maybe also comment, if I still have time, could I comment even on gender? Gender came out quite clear, and some colleagues, Shamiso has also mentioned it as well. But maybe let's also expand it to say gender equality and social inclusion, where we are looking at, if you're looking at the Nexus, there are so many people who lose out with other disabilities, people with disabilities. We need to look at the role of youths. I know the role of youths has already been mentioned, but what are the other people who are losing out, who are more vulnerable, even those who are old and who are not accessing what we are proposing? And then the other component I also want to comment on is we also need to have a nimble policy context. Because what we are saying is that let's think outside the box. And maybe as researchers, we are thinking outside the box, but are the policymakers going to act outside the box as well so that they go beyond what they've always been doing? How do they connect the dots and make sure that maybe they, in their perspective, they are not looking at it from the perspective of their individual ministry, but in terms of how the different ministries impact on the people's livelihoods. So in a way, our focus is what is it, where are we going? What do we want to do? We want to improve people's livelihoods. And then how do the different ministries contribute towards that endeavor? That sort of thinking, I think, should also be coming out. I don't know whether I should also be commenting on some of the experiences that we have or some of the potential projects, or my time is up, I'm not sure.
You can go ahead. I'll just give you 5 minutes. I'm still accepting contributions in the chat, but please go ahead. 5 minutes. I'm furiously jotting down. I'm hearing some buzzwords here that I think will wrap this up nicely. Please do share the experiences.
Okay, thank you very much. And then the other element that we would want to mention on in terms of some of the experiences that we are seeing. For instance, in our case, in some of the work that we have done, we actually now beginning this in Africa, but we have started some work in India, which we now implementing in some countries in Africa, where we are trying to link at water, energy, and food nexus. And here what we are doing is we provided maybe farmers who were using irrigation. So instead of using the normal grid electricity, they actually started using solar powered energy in order to pump water for irrigation. And so they produced crops, and they are saving on in terms of costs for pumping water for their irrigation schemes, and also the advantage in terms of it's a clean and smart energy as well. But not only have we done that, but we have also gone further to also engage governments to change policies so that if you have extra energy, the governments can buy off some of the extra energy that you are generating from some of the irrigation schemes. So we actually see solar farming as being part of it's part of farming, and it's generating revenue for the farmers as well, and producing crops in a sustainable manner. But what we have also been saying is that how do we ensure that these sort of innovations can be more inclusive? So we have started working on business models in order to help people to be able to access solar-powered innovations. And these business models come in different formats. For example, you could have an investor where we are talking about financing. They provide solar-powered pumping system, because it's in order to reduce the capital outlay for some of the smallholder farmers and the women, the youths. They just pay for what they are using some sort of prepaid schemes. And once they do that, we're also thinking that this could be expanded into value addition. You then provide maybe women and youths have employment opportunities within rural settings where they are doing value addition using the solar powered schemes, and using various types of models and arrangements to ensure that they are also addressing, they are also ensuring that they are being productive, they are also producing efficiently, they are using smart energy, and they are also adding value and creating employment opportunities within the rural areas, and also having some of the youths even being trained as some of the solar engineers who are helping to install and repair some of the systems, which then creates employment for the youths within the rural areas. There are other things, maybe I will not go into those as well, but some of the things we are looking at, gender transformative approach. How do we change people's norms in order to change what they are doing? Because a lot of people, we talk about gender, we need to look at gender, but how do we in practice introduce the changes? And also, especially with the understanding that when you're introducing changes, don't just expect other people to change, but you should also be willing to change yourself, because it's easy to say somebody or the farmer has to change, but we also need to change the way we think about the farmers. We think about the interventions that we promote and how we get our knowledge and our science and our research. I have other things to say, but if my time is up, maybe I'll back to you.
Let me allow you to take a break here, because you have said quite a lot of very powerful statements here that I think we need to digest and look at a bit. So the last one really is, if you want to see the change, be the change yourself, which was very powerful. I thought it was also interesting, especially given that IMWI is a global water management institute, that you are able to learn from other continents, from India, for instance, this example of solar farming that you just shared and the business models that you're starting to develop. I thought that was very exciting. And I think as a continent, we should not be afraid to learn from outside our borders, especially even within the continent, SADC to EAC to ECOWAS. Can we be able to come together and learn from each other, and then also go outside the continent to get some important lessons that can help us develop much faster than perhaps some of those countries have? So some of the interesting points that you raised, the whole idea of going beyond the WEF Nexus as we currently know it, pushing further and bringing in the ecosystems and biodiversity. I think it's actually particularly interesting because our last webinar, which we are planning for towards the end of the month, is going to be focusing on land degradation and biodiversity. And I think that one will be a very interesting one to actually pull some of the issues that you have mentioned. Then also on the issue of what is Africa taking to COP in Egypt? What are we going to be pushing forward? Part of why we are having these dialogues is so that we gather the evidence that we can package and equip our negotiators to be able to speak authoritatively on the challenges that as a continent that we are facing, but also not just speak on challenges, but propose solutions, go in with a leg up in terms of the negotiations. So very exciting things that are coming from our three speakers today. I see we've also got some chatter going on in the chat. One point I want to pick up, Suilanji says, for Africa, the highest priority should be to simultaneously close the gap, the large energy, water, and food security gap. Access to technologies, knowledge, and finance are key for setting up viable business models. So the issue of business models also coming up quite strongly. I think this is youth speak. You know, when the youth are thinking innovation, they're also thinking, how am I going to sort of support that innovation and fund that innovation? So excellent points that are coming up. Lako has also added to say that the adding ecosystems, which I think Evaristo brought up quite strongly, is a very critical point. So thank you. Please keep the contributions coming through the chat. We love to hear your ideas. I wonder if I have enough time. It's 4:15 now. We just have about 15 minutes. If I can just go back perhaps to Lako and Shamiso, and lastly to Evaristo, in 1 minute, something that you want to leave us with that we can take home. Let's start with Lako, if you're still in.
Yes, I'm still here having a different background. Yes, the one thing I want us to keep is that water, energy, and food nexus is very important, but actually we need to get more of extension about what it is, what are the benefits and co-benefits, and also take and give more energy for it to be really empowered and taken up in the policies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What are the core benefits? What are we gaining? What are we losing? And how can we take it forward? Shami, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think I'll just build on what Lako has said. The WEF Nexus is a very important concept for the continent because we are so rich in natural resources. But I think it's very important for us to begin to look beyond just our natural resource capabilities and really look to driving productive capacities that can build on socioeconomic well-being and development. So we really need to focus on how these natural resources can be produced within the continent and for these technologies to be scaled up as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That whole productive capacities issue that you're bringing up again, I think you and I need to have some tea somewhere and unpack that. Thank you so much, Shami. Evaristo, I come back to you on your sort of parting shots.
Maybe from my end, one of the things that I would just say is that we actually need to demystify why we are doing this. We need to answer why are we doing all this in terms of the different conceptual frameworks that we are coming up with. The key point that we need to understand is that we want to make a difference in a poor man and woman or a young child's livelihoods. So that should be the starting point. So it's all about how do we address the requirements at the local level. And we are using these framings or these frameworks to help us better do what we are supposed to be doing. I think that would be maybe my point, and maybe also secondly, to say that we should also understand, because especially coming from research, we want to understand how we leverage policymakers to make a difference as well. So we need to understand what motivates the researchers, the policymakers to change their practice. With that understanding, we can tailor, make our recommendations to ensure that it will not end up as just reports, but it will translate into benefits for a man or a woman in some rural areas somewhere else. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that point. Your point on policymakers reminds me of something that I giggled at when you said we need a nimble policy context, and that we need to think outside the box. But whilst we are thinking outside the box, are our policymakers going to think outside the box? I think there is a question. And definitely we need to have the ultimate beneficiary at the center of everything that we do. Why are we doing this? And on that note, I would like to thank my three panelists for the excellent contributions and reflections that they have given this afternoon. This will certainly enrich the thematic brief that we are working on. Thank you so much. And thank you to the participants that have been active in the chat. We have captured all the contributions and the comments. Over to you, Prof. Spanda.
Thank you very much, Tembi and the team. Excellent contributions, as you've said. Colleagues, we are on a journey. We've got 4 thematic briefs. We have shared 2 of these. We have 2 more to share with you. I want to respond to a question that was asked, what happens to these innovations? A second one was, where will we find these policymakers? So, where do we find the policymakers? Researchers, you are the messengers who are collecting the message. You are generating the evidence, packaging it into a policy brief. We are mopping up all the contributions that have come from this conversation and also receiving your inputs via email. We are going to work closely with you to put together a policy brief of no more than 4 pages for this thematic area, land, water, and energy. When we have done that, we are going to convene in June what we call regional webinars. In the regional webinars, we are going to touch East, West, North, South, and Central Africa. And the whole idea is to use a platform where we have the message and we are equipping the messengers in our regions with the policy advisory notes. So each region will be visited. Please project that again. And that will be happening in June. But before we get to June, you asked, what's going to happen with these innovations? Who's going to invest? We have all learned that one catalytic stakeholder who makes scale, who takes things to the people for implementation is private sector. As the Future Africa Institute, in partnership with FANAPAN and with our partners, the development partners and foundations that are working with us, they are linking us to like-minded institutions that are in the business of funding innovations. We already talked to a couple, some are in the US, who are already keen on understanding these innovations and seeing how they can match us with private sector. Our big goal would be not to be a talk shop, but to take some select innovations that we endorse as Africa, take them to the Africa COP in Egypt, do some B2B matchmaking with business partners, and get investments that will take this to scale. That's how we are doing it. We are not doing it alone. You are welcome to accompany this journey. What you have seen, what you've heard, if it speaks to you, talk to investors, talk to policymakers, because at the end of the day, we are all going to be the messengers for this message that we are packaging. So 2 things to note. Give us your comments on this Nexus issue we're talking about. Email us, but more important, accompany us in the packaging of the policy brief and its delivery to the regional webinars that are going to happen in June. So allow me to say that our next, so those are the regional webinars, just mark your dates. If, as our stakeholders, you find that there are dates that we've chosen that are either falling on a holiday, we've tried to be sensitive to the calendar of events in each region and choosing dates, please get to us whilst there's time so that we adjust the dates. But the 2 must happen dates, these are the regional ones. My man keeps shifting. So these are the regional workshops. Give it some time to breathe. West Africa, 6 June. East Africa, 7 June. North Africa, 8 June. Central Africa, 9 June. Southern Africa, 10 June. We've tried to squeeze them in so that within that week, we can move fast and be able to share the outputs from these thematic webinars. Now, we've done 2 out of 4 themes: food security today, land, water, and energy. Next week, we are moving to our 3rd thematic webinar. We are meeting on the 24th of May, and we are going to be looking at One Health and climate change, people, animal, ecosystems, health, and well-being. We talk One Health, which brings 4 UN agencies: It brings WHO on people's health. It brings FAO on nutrition. It brings UNEP on the environment. And it brings OIE, which is the organization that deals with diseases. So we are looking at healthy people, healthy planet, healthy environment. What is the effect of climate change on those? So join us on the 24th of May at the same time, 3 p.m. Southern African time, as we dialogue on the thematic webinar. We are going to send you the thematic brief as we've done a good 5 days before, and we'll line up the program of experts who are going to be our messengers. Our policy is to end these webinars 5 minutes in advance. We are trying to set a new trend. We are all hopping from 1 minute back to another. We need a 5-minute breather. And on that note, I think I'm beating the records. It's exactly 25 past on my watch. It's time to say goodbye. We see you again on the 24th of May. Have a pleasant day. And thank you to all our presenters.
Maybe before everyone disappears, a group photo. I think we're
You always say. Whoever is still in, can you just put your camera on? Tembi always likes to know who is who.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Can we have a very big smile, and then I take the photographs.
Tembi and Prof, just for your information, colleagues from Parliament joined in as well.
Excellent. We are honored to have them, and we hope they'll join us again for the Southern Africa thematic webinar, which we are going to have for the region in June. So we will share those dates. Welcome to our colleagues from Parliament in South Africa, and let's spread the word and invite our own parliaments in the different countries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.